a heads up, counting from 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thanks, and welcome to the special called meeting of Rules, Confirmations, and Special Elections. We are here tonight to discuss the proposed committee structure changes. Again, if everybody could take their seats, please. Councilman Hancock, could you take your seat, please? Sorry, I can hear you and it's distracting me. My brain can't do that many things at one time. So what I put in front of you, or some lovely fairy did for me, is the proposed committee structure that we left with the last time that we met. And so at the very least, I feel like this body is going to have to change the Public Works Committee just because we don't have a Public Works Department anymore and things have been all kind of spread out. So the thought process is let's go ahead and update everything. Hopefully it creates a little bit better of a process, easier for scheduling, and less duplicative referrals. But at the same time, what we have now is roughly the same as what we had in 1963. So the city is quite different. Everything looks and is quite different. So it's probably time to just update it. And we may not even go, like right now, this has eight committees. We'll probably go to 10. Right now we have, I think, 14. So just trying to get everything a little bit more organized and more reflective of our government and city today. So I want to kind of take things one by one. I think an easy discussion right now is, do we want to pull education out on its own and have its own committee? They don't meet very often. They don't consider much legislation, but the past two council members that have had that chair seat have worked really hard to create that working relationship with the school board and the staff there. And so they've got a little bit of momentum going, and I know that they don't want to drop that. I'm sure Council Lady Porterfield will agree. Is that something we want to discuss, or is that something we want to just say, let's go ahead and pull out education on its own? Hold on. There. Councilman Mendez.
Thanks. I wasn't able to come to Rules last time because of doing the pro tem gig. And so I know you want to take it one at a time, but I think my comment relates to all of it. And this is the only forum I have to come express it. I have, both in a volunteer capacity and getting paid as a lawyer capacity, reworked board structures for organizations before. Sometimes board structures where there's boards that are bigger than the council. And my experience generally is that whatever changes you make to committee structure will improve some things and make other things worse. No matter what we change on the committee structure, there's going to be the same amount of legislation, and the bandwidth for those of us who sit in the room is going to be the same. Our attention span will be the same. And so no matter how the work gets divided up, something's got to give. And so my overall approach would be every version of committee setups is equally bad and equally good. It's just a matter of whatever you improve, something else is going to get worse. So fundamentally, I don't care. And this is usually what I tell clients is like, you want to change all your committee structures?
You can't tell your clients that.
No, that is the advice I give, because whatever they change, 2 years later, they're going to say, well, that sucks. Let's do it differently.
Right.
Because inherently, committee work is difficult and challenging, and there's no perfect arrangement. So fundamentally, I don't care. Whatever 21 people or 27 people want to vote for, it's fine. With me, it's like the manner in which I incur brain damage through our committee structure, I'm indifferent to. However, my advice would be that wholesale changes will increase the likelihood of downside and not pick up a lot of upside. And so generally, I'm skeptical. If I'm not in the advice-giving mode, but the decision-making mode, I'm generally resistant to especially large-scale changes. And so I'm happy to, I'm going to listen the rest of the way. I don't really have any comments because, again, the manner in which this ends up, I don't really care. But as somebody who has been through this with other large boards and been paid to help large boards do this, my just note is there's nothing magical about what we're going to do. Whatever we don't like now might get better. We're going to dislike something else. And a year from now or a year and a half from now, somebody can say, why the heck do we do it that way? That's crazy. Let's change it. So that's my comment. And again, I know that's not really what you asked about, but I didn't have a chance to come to rules last time, and I just wanted to make sure to share that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think, and I've said this multiple times, there's so many ways to do this, and we can argue different places. Like, for example, environment. Well, where does environment go? Is it a regulation? Is it something more from a sustainability, perspective? But so there's lots of different ways to do it. I think that's part of the conversation is let's try to mitigate as much of the negative impacts and just update these committee structures. You're right, same amount of legislation, same number of absences that are causing quorum issues. That's certainly not, this is not going to solve that, but I am excited at the thought of updating something that was basically put into place in 1963. Okay, I've got Council Lady Sepulveda. You're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Since we're broad
Yeah,
right now, I thought I'd go ahead and just raise some outstanding questions I still had.
Okay.
Which was, if we condense some of these committees, the amount of legislation that's going to go to one committee is just going to get larger. If the committees themselves, the body gets larger, we're still going to have quorum issues because we're going to need a larger number of council members to still be present. There were questions raised about if some of these committees go longer, it's going to be harder for council members to adjust and to be able to get to another committee on time. We're already having a little bit of trouble with committees ending on time to be able to start our council meeting. And it's been happening a little bit lately. So, I still do have several concerns. I think there's a little bit of wiggle room with some of these committees that might make sense. But overall, I'm in agreement with Councilmember Mendez. I think a minimal change might be a little better to be able to ease into things and test the waters, to say. So those are just my 2 cents.
Thank you. Councilman Cash.
Thank you. I would like for education to be moved separately. I'm looking at both this, official committee structure, and I'm looking at Councilman Bradford's. And the only thing that in both of those that I think could be grouped with education that makes sense to me is Metro Action Commission, who does have a lot to do with, Head Start and preschool stuff. And early childhood, which I'd like to see more on our on the Education Committee agenda. And I think part of it is that we only schedule these committee meetings if there is legislation. So we can have specially scheduled meetings, which for education in the past has been meeting with district officials or school board members. But I don't know that there's a lot of opportunity in those meetings to kind of talk about issues and see where, kind of see if there's some legislation that might come out of it rather than rubber stamping or rejecting legislation. So I would like to see kind of the Education Committee have some different, add some things to it. It seems very focused on K through 12 education, which is great and appropriate, but I do think that there are other things like job trainings, especially in metro government, as well as in like community benefit agreements if there's training, job training type stuff. I think there are some ways that we can expand that committee, not to make it a whole lot more work, but just to make sure that we're looking at different parts of truly broad education in the city. I'll add that, I am fairly good with this list, other than what I just said, except for number 2. I think there's just a lot in committee number 2, and it makes me kind of uncomfortable how much is in there.
That's on the agenda next. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Cash. Council Lady Sepulveda, you are recognized. I mean, I'm sorry, Porterfield. I'm sorry. I read the wrong name. You don't even look anything alike.
I was going to say, we look just alike. So thank you, Madam Chair. Just to piggyback off of my fellow educator, Councilmember Cash, I do like education and Metro Action Commission. I think that makes sense for them to be grouped together. I would also push the envelope a little bit and say libraries, because our libraries do a lot. They are public service, but they also do a lot under the umbrella of education. So that's my only comment at the moment. I do.
What would you name that if you were to put education, MAC, and libraries together? What would you call it? Just at
education, educational resources, educational services, maybe?
Yeah, the only thing is that MAC doesn't always do educational resources stuff. I mean, I'm just trying to, thinking out loud. But yeah, I get that. Okay, does anybody have any?
Oh, I was actually still.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay, no worries. It's quite all right. I was just going to say that I also wanted to agree with Councilmember Mendez. I'm a little apprehensive. I'm excited about the opportunity to see how we can make things more efficient and more effective, but I do have some concerns about just making the changes, how we're grouping them, and the potential impact that this is going to have. So I'm here to be open-minded, but I have some reservations. So thank you, Chair.
Absolutely. Council Lady Hancock.
I'm also in agreement with Councilman Mendez that, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, whichever way we shake it, we're still not going to like something and we're going to love something else. In your proposed committee structure, a big change I would want to make would be to remove environment from the already crowded government operations area and move it to human services, specifically because even though we say hospitals, I wish we would say health. I would like to rename that hospitals word health. Health is in charge of so much with the environment, with our emissions testing, with our septic tank allowances, with just anything that we do that regards policy. It comes under our Department of Health because they have the scientists that can study this. So I don't think that we should put it under government operations because they're not going to make the decision with the environment in mind. They're going to make it just with rules in mind. So I think it should be under health. When you look at Councilman Bradford's suggestions, I love the layout. I think it's very clean. I would separate health from public safety. I think public safety is a huge issue and not the same as health. So I would leave that public safety committee alone, remove health, and add it to the environment committee so that it's health and the environment, or however you want to name it. But other than that, I really think his structure is solid. Thank you.
Thank you. I do want to point out that when we say environment, that's kind of a broad term, and there are people that are looking at it from health perspectives of air pollution and this, that, and the other. But then there's other people that look at environment as a sustainability type issue, so renewable energy, that type of stuff,
Which also affects our health.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna mute you now. Thank you. So what I got out of that is that pulling education out, I think, is probably the consensus. Council Lady Murphy, you did not speak first or the longest yet.
So I am in agreement on the education issue.
I wanted to just bring up that I understand that committees that are on off days and off weeks like today and the other ones that we had are sometimes difficult to get to. But we are starting to rehash conversations that we've had in previous rules meeting. And this, what we have before us does not reflect the conversation we had last time. And I think that there was a lot of good conversation there. I think we also can pull out our thesaurus or use an app on our phone and start thinking of different words for different words on these lists. I think it's time that we have spent enough time in committees and we need to commit to whether we want to change. If we want to change, then let's continue to talk about the committee structure and start finalizing things. Otherwise, we're going to get in the situation where this is going to carry on for forever. I said before that I think it's best that we go ahead and make a change, live with it for a year if we can. This is perfect timing because we're in the middle of the term. We're not at the end of the term making a decision for the next term, things like that. So we can live with it, sit with it, see how it works, see how it doesn't work, and tweak from there. But if we want to get into hashing out words in different meetings and the fact that I think a lot of people have put a lot of time into putting this proposed structures together. And a lot of that is based off of words that we currently use, because if we took away a word, somebody wanted that put back in. We can wordsmith all day long. But I think that we've spent a lot of time on this, and we need to start making decisions instead of keep using adjectives and nouns and swapping word for word. So that's just my 2 cents. I have a friend in from New Orleans, and so I am going to have to scoot on out. And so I think that I have given enough comment and feedback back on these in previous meetings, and happy to do that in Rules Committee. Thank y'all. Thank you, Council Lady Murphy. I agree. This is our 3rd special called meeting, I think, and we've talked about it multiple times. There's been plenty of opportunity to talk and talk and talk and talk. And so we're going to come up with something tonight, and then we will discuss it at committee on Tuesday night, and we'll vote on it. I mean, it'll either pass or it won't. I mean, because we could literally talk about this in perpetuity, and at some point, it's ridiculous. Council Lady Evans, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I had asked a question in our last meeting that you didn't have insight into because you said it was the Vice Mayor's responsibility, and I wanted to know if the Vice Mayor is taking questions.
I can ask him to. Vice Mayor, you have a question coming. I think is that admin table? Okay, good.
Thank you. I have the question. So the last meeting, one of the questions that I had, because we had some conversation about quorums and issues like that. And so question I had asked was about if you had thought about, as part of this process, would you be looking at reducing the number of committees council members were on as part of this change, or is that on your mind right now?
So are you talking about if we left things the way they were, or if we made a change?
If we make a change.
And so the question would be, we'd have a smaller number of committees. And are you saying, would I look at having people on fewer committees?
Yes, sir.
Probably. I think the whole idea with this is to, at least what I thought, was to try to give everybody a little bit more time on their specific committees to meet and actually study issues. I thought that was part of the reason to reduce the number so you would have more time. If I'd look at it, but I think the idea was if you really wanted to pinpoint some things, instead of people serving on 3 or 4 committees, there would be fewer, and so I'd probably pick fewer people to be on it.
Okay, thank you. That's all I needed to know.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm sorry. Councilman Mendez, you said you weren't going to talk anymore.
I know, and I'll probably leave after this just to make sure I don't. Honest to God, with the same amount of legislation, changing the number of committees does not change the total amount of committee time.
Right.
So I hear efficient and time for study, like don't make a change for that. Like the only way there's time for study is an additional time commitment from council members beyond the current time commitment. Just the physics of the amount of legislation isn't changing. And so don't make a change for that reason. Like if there's other reasons for matching, like you said, committees to current government realities, that makes sense. But nobody should think that it's getting more efficient or faster.
Probably not from our perspective, but from the council office as far as like referring to committees where it goes. Because we've got a lot of committees right now where there'll be one piece of legislation. And everybody sits down, you call to order, you do it. Okay, and now they move to another room. It's like, why don't you just combine some things that don't see a whole lot of legislation so that when you do sit down, maybe there's 3 or 4 or 5 items to look at versus 5 committees looking at one different, one specific thing. So that would be an efficiency that I do see happening, but I mean, I get it. It's still the same.
One of the trade-offs for that is, like last term, when Erica Gilmore sat there, when she was on budget and finance, if we started at 4:30 or 5, she could be here. If we started at 4 or 3:30, she couldn't be here. And just picking budget and finance, because that's a committee I've been on throughout, if you make that meeting any longer, you run the risk of losing attendance. And that's got to be a known trade-off to making any decision to decrease the number of committees so they can do more stuff absolutely will impact attendance around the edges, because it just will, because people have got jobs and stuff. And so I will go back to saying I will say nothing else.
Thank you. When I look at this, I see 3 big, assuming that we separate out government ops and regulations, I see 3 big ones: budget and finance, planning, and government ops. Those would be your 3 biggest committees that see the biggest amount of legislation. The other things, when you look at public facilities and culture, how often are we looking at legislation that has anything to do with public entertainment facilities, fair, farmers market, arts, beautification, libraries, parks, greenways, open space? Not very much. Same thing with human services, really, even if you left education in there. Education, health and hospitals, social services, veterans, MAC, human relations, it's just not that much. These are smaller things, and it really is just a matter of just how are we, it is more of a reflective thing of how are we operating now, is the way that I see it anyway. So there's been a lot of talk about separating out the government ops and regulations. Originally, we had government regulations, and that included regulated beverages, codes, water, stormwater, solid waste, and environment. Everything else was government operations. So public safety, rules, public elections, personnel, public information, and ITS would have been government operations. Do we want to go back to that? And then if we do, what are we doing with utilities? Because we added utilities because water is a utility, that kind of stuff. So do we just take utilities out of the name of it and just have government ops and government ops and government regulations? Or do we say government ops and utilities, or, Councilor Sepulveda? Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at what you have proposed for this committee structure, it just, I don't feel like it goes together. For instance, I still think rules should be with confirmations. I don't understand how public safety gets put in with codes, water, stormwater, waste.
It doesn't.
It's all on. Under
If we separated out government ops and government regulations, it wouldn't be together. Public safety would be an operation, not a regulation.
Got it. What is public information?
Anybody want to take that one? Councilman Withers can answer that better than me, because I don't know.
Thank you. This for a long
Websites
time.
and stuff, probably.
Yeah, this for a long time has been part of the personnel, public information, human relations, and whatnot. So that really is IT, but it could also include the Metro clerk or some of those things. But really, mostly it's IT legislation, but it could be also the Metro clerk and things that are on the Metro website.
So it would be part of like government operations.
Can you, if you don't mind, if you could quickly tell me what's government ops and regulations again?
So government regulations, if we were to separate it out, the way we had it before was regulated beverages, codes, water and stormwater, solid waste, and environment. We've talked about putting environment in with human services. So you can put a question mark around environment possibly, but that's what would be regulations. The operations, excuse me, would be public safety, rules, public elections, personnel, public information, and ITS. Now, I have no problem putting rules and confirmations together.
I just think that makes.
I don't have any, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, like, again, you know, there's a million ways we can do this, but I have no problem doing that. I do like the idea of having confirmations a separate thing, just because we've had so much attention focused on these confirmations lately, and because of it being in a different committee, to me, I feel like the whole body should have the opportunity to ask questions. Because when it comes to the floor, there is no question that we can ask. They don't address us specifically. So if we change it to where it's, you know, right before the meetings, right before whatever, that would give everybody the chance to get all this done, all of our committee stuff done, have people come into the room, and everybody, all 40 of us, have the opportunity to ask questions and hear directly from that nominee versus creating quorum issues because, oh, they're in, you know, public safety, but they really want to hear what's going on with the airport authority or whatever, you know?
I don't agree. I feel like council members could now attend rules committee meetings and ask questions. We're all always invited to other committees, and if there's time and the chair decides to recognize us at some point, then we're able to ask questions. I just feel like having the structure we have now for confirmations is a little bit more balanced, as opposed to confirmations having rotating committee members every time we change chairs and vice chairs. We have several council members who are on their second term who have been on rules for some time now, and they've gotten to know, you know, hey, these committees that we are appointing people to, some of them don't meet on time, and they're able to ask specific questions that I think that brings a lot of benefit to these confirmation hearings, and I would just hate to see that go.
Thank you. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Your mic is not on. Now it is.
Okay. Real quick, I just wanted to point out that public elections is probably something that you're going to want to group with confirmations, just because it's basically the same function. Public elections are things like IDB, COB, so it's still going to be interviewing candidates. So I just wanted to point that out, that you're probably going to want to keep those together.
Okay, so keeping rules, confirmations, and public elections exactly the way that it is now.
That can work, right?
Okay. Okay. So taking that out, and that out. Okay. So here's a thought. What if we kept it government operations, regulations, and utilities, since we've pulled rules and public elections out of that and pulled public safety out as a separate committee, since it does see quite a bit and it's sort of on its own. I don't have a, you know, I think that there's an argument to be made for that. So then we would have public safety on its own. We would have education on its own. We would have rules, confirmations, and public elections on its own. Transportation, to mimic NDOT. Human services, again, pulling education out on its own. We can say human services and environment, or, you know. Okay, good. Doesn't have to be in the title. Sweet. Okay, so human services, but I can pull Environment. Does anybody, there was a suggestion that was made, transportation and sustainability. So for energy efficiency, renewable energy sources, things like that, to sort of have more of a focus on that, since I think, back in 1963, I don't know that anybody knew what the word sustainability meant or green energy. That was not even a thought process. So does anybody have any feedback on transportation and sustainability? Councilman O'Connell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To me, in looking at the proposed committee structure, I certainly understand where Councilmember Mendez is coming from, right? That there will be trade-offs we make for kind of any pivots. I think, we probably, though, even from just a basic communication standpoint, we do want, I think, the committees to reflect current priorities of the city and current organization of the government, right? And so that's where I think some of the changes that you're proposing to map, for instance, NDOT and other things that we're seeing change are appropriate. I think from that standpoint, we're looking at maybe, for instance, I think a lot of Nashvillians, one of the most common phrases that you hear that maps onto a government function in community meetings is infrastructure, right? And so, I mean, on the one hand, I could see a transportation and infrastructure scenario. On the other hand, kind of to your point, I do think that one of the things that we are dealing with and should be dealing with as a general concern is sort of climate, energy, policy under that domain. The even suggestion that we are thinking about this thing as this policy domain as a city is helpful. I may wind up, as with Councilmember Hancock, and not care so much about whether it's in a committee name so much as whether or not, kind of the functions that you've got listed here very, very explicitly say, yes, this is sort of where policy issues in that domain go, right? We know now that at least, right, we know this is going to be a little bit incomplete because, I'm sitting here assuming that at some point solid waste might be a standalone division of Metro. I'm okay if that happens under government operations, but that also says something about the solid waste plan we just passed. To Councilmember Hancock's point, a lot of things about air quality are addressed by the Metro Public Health Department, but most of the sustainability initiatives in Metro right now fall under general services, and then anything that is more related to active transportation or transit are going to fall at NDOT. So I think as long as we've got the space to cover the policy areas, I think as I'm sitting here listening to the discussion, I may be caring less about the committee names and caring more that the topics that we're going to need to cover are there. The only other thing I'll mention, just as an addendum to all of that, is I know we've got public information and ITS in here. I think just generally speaking, the city as a whole is continuing to grapple with things that are related to technology and the rapid onset of it, whether that's platforms and the way they affect municipal activity or direct technology, digital, any kind of digital devices or deployment of technology, whether it's metro or private sector. I know a lot of other cities are starting to consider those kinds of things, data and how it's stored, those kinds of things. I don't know if we're calling that out enough, but I could be satisfied with the Transportation and Infrastructure Department. I could be satisfied with the committee. I could be satisfied with transportation and sustainability. As long as the policy space for that exists in whatever we come up with, I think I'll be satisfied.
So my only concern about saying transportation and infrastructure is that infrastructure is a huge word. And so water and stormwater, that's infrastructure. There's all kinds of stuff. And so then it's like, okay, well, what kind of infrastructure, so then you got a dual referral and whatever. I'm thinking maybe
I hear you.
If you're okay with not having the whole title being, I think if what you're talking about from a sustainability standpoint policy that would be more in the government operations, regulations, and utilities because it's general services. So to me, anything general services related would be in that world. Sort of makes sense. And so I'm happy to add into the description sustainability. You know, I'm just trying to figure out the best way to do it. I think because because NDOT is really specific on, you know, transportation and right of way and whatever, I think adding to it outside of that may cause some confusion, but I'm not opposed to it. And also, I want to repeat that this is not my suggestion that you're looking at. This is a compilation of a lot of council members, Councilman Sledge, Councilman O'Connell, Vice Mayor, there's Elizabeth Waits. There's a lot of people that went into this. In fact, I'm very little of it. I'm just sitting here. I don't know. Sometimes I wonder why. Councilman hold on, where are you? Bradford.
Thank you. So I just wanted to speak a little bit more on the environmental, the water, stormwater. So the background of why I put all those together under the environmental and sustainability is it came from, first of all, what's left of Public Works. So all the transportation-related duties of Public Works is now with NDOT, which left Metro Water Department with water, stormwater, recycling, solid waste, beautification, brush pickup, a lot of items that don't really fall under the Metro Water umbrella. And so putting all that together, well, what does all that have in common? It's all environmental based, it's all sustainability. And that's where I was going with that, to kind of make sure that everything that deals with natural resources, with the environment, with recycling, is under one umbrella. And with the hope that eventually, from the government administrative side, we start pushing in the direction of putting all those departments under a Department of Natural Resources or a Department of Utilities and Natural Resources, instead of Metro Water being in charge of all these non-water related activities. So that's kind of history of where I came to the environmental sustainability. I understand the concept behind health, but at the same time, health is hospitals, health is vaccinations. Yes, they do air quality, but under this definition of environment, it's natural resources, it's water, it's recycling, it's brush pickup, it's beautification, anything related to trees, and et cetera. So, explanation there. And that's why I'm kind of wanting to make sure, whether it's in the title or not, that we do have a committee that will be focused on these programs. And because starting last term under Councilman O'Connell, and we're seeing it now, more and more of a push for greener technologies, greener strategies, sustainability. You know, we've seen a push the last term and this term with better protection for trees. So I just want to make sure that we have a committee where all those items can have an opportunity to be discussed and brought to importance. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, sorry. Council Lady Hancock, you are recognized.
I think this is awesome and amazing. I mean, sustainability does fit in that government operations committee because, you know, recycling, all of that is sustainability. Beautification is with that department now, so I totally agree with that. Sustainability does fit with transportation because you do have all the air pollution standards that those vehicles are being held to and the new vehicles that we have. Sustainability does fit with the Human Services Committee because you have the sustainable actions that the schools are doing and recycling their food waste and getting the kids out there and planting the gardens. And sustainability fits with the planning committee because you have the rules that they have to regulate with the trees and, you know, all of the different, in Madison currently right now, we're relocating to streamside salamander habitats so we can save the streamside salamanders. And So sustainability fits in so many places, and I think this is an awesome problem to have because we wouldn't have heard this 10 years ago. So I'll be happy wherever it is, and it will also be everywhere.
I'm going to recognize Council Lady Stiles real quick, just because I haven't heard from her quite yet. Hello.
Hello, Chair, thank you. In terms of the renaming of the committees, I know we discussed in rules 2 weeks ago that there does need to be a dedicated committee to the arts versus kind of lumping it under public facilities or culture. So I'm hoping that that's still open for conversation, so the arts have their own dedicated name.
You're the first person that said that, so I'm happy to have a discussion about it if anybody has a thought process on that. Or is that what you're talking about? Okay. Council Lady Sepulveda.
I do like Councilmember Bradford's committee that's art, entertainment, and tourism. I think all of that makes a lot of sense to me, and it does give it its own space. So I like that committee that's proposed.
Yeah, so where we had put, I think, basically all of, well, except for tourism, just because tourism is more of an economic function. And so we have that up in budget and finance. That's where.
Chair, if I may,
Sure.
What's been up before tourism quite a bit is approving, events and such, and that's been the case since the term started for us. I'm sure there's absolutely more that can be done, but that's a huge bulk of it.
I mean, I'm happy to have that discussion as well. Council Lady Stiles.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, 2 points. One, to commend Councilmember Bradford for naming this committee. I think that is very all-encompassing. And to Councilmember Sepulveda's point, I have been on the convention committee for our 2 years that we've been here, and that is the bulk of what comes before us. It is entertainment and event-based. So I do believe tourism needs to be included with the arts.
Okay, so down at public facilities and culture, which is where we have arts, entertainment facilities. So moving tourism down there and renaming, I do like public facilities because that actually makes a lot of sense. If we want to say public facilities and arts, is that?
Arts needs to lead. I think it needs to be
Arts and public
entertainment, public facilities.
Can I get a nodded head for if that's makes everybody happy? I see one head nodding. Okay, I got some head shaking. Okay, that's not a consensus. Councilman Withers.
Thank you for recognizing me. I know a person who really lobbied very hard to get arts to be named initially was Councilmember Van Rees, but so I want to honor her advocacy for that for many years.
I will say she was here at the last meeting and she had no.
Well, and I think culture is a broad term. I
Yes.
guess one of the things too that I'm getting at though is that I think culture, arts and libraries and parks, I think those work together really well because those departments, particularly libraries, tries to incorporate art. They try to work with parks like Church Street Park, for instance. I think there's some degree of this kind of arts culture aspect that is a little bit different than Nissan Stadium, for instance, which is a Metro-owned facility. Does that make sense? I think that some of those things probably, however we want to name it, that need to stay together if they can.
Okay, so what if we move tourism, down to number 3 and rename it arts, entertainment, and public facilities?
But it would still include, it would include the same things that are currently in 3, but also tourism?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Does that? Hold on, I can't hear you, hold on. Now what again?
Yes, that is exactly what I suggested.
Perfect. Okay. So I've got that, and I saw more heads nodding than shaking, so that's what I'm going to go with. I'm going to add sustainability as a description in government operations, regulations, and utilities. Do we want to pull public safety out on its own? I see 4 yeses. I got your yes, girl. Okay, so I've got public safety on its own. Okay, I think we've got some good stuff. So here's, if you'll follow along with me. So budget and finance would be budget and finance, economic development, and convention. Government operations, regulations, and utilities would cover regulated beverages, codes, water, stormwater, solid waste, personnel, public information, ITS, sustainability. Then number 3 is renamed arts, entertainment, and public facilities. It includes public facilities, fair, farmers market, arts, beautification, libraries, parks, greenways, open space, and tourism. Number 4 is health and human services. We've pulled education out, so it would include hospitals, social services, veterans, Metro Action Commission, human relations, and environment. Transportation stands on its own. Planning, zoning, do we want to say planning, zoning, and housing, or planning, zoning, and affordable housing? Ms. Council Lady Sepulveda.
I really do think affordable housing needs to be on its own. I know
Perfect.
that.
I get it. Yeah, yeah. Okay, we're going to put affordable there. Rules, confirmations, and public elections stays the same. Charter revision stays the same. We've pulled public safety out. We've pulled education out. Hold on. Well, hold on. Council Lady Stiles.
Thank you, Chair. So in reading this descriptor of confirmations, chairs.
Yeah, no. That goes away. Sorry.
Okay.
Delete all
Thank
the text underneath there. It's just going to be rules, confirmations. It's going to stay exactly the same as it was. Council Lady Sepulveda.
Sorry, Chair, just to confirm, I meant affordable housing as its own committee. Is that what you got, or were you saying?
No, planning, zoning, and affordable housing.
No, I think affordable housing needs to be its own committee. Several council members pushed for a long time to have that be its own. We do a lot of work in that committee, and lumping that in with planning it's just going to take too much time, and planning's already pretty long.
I was told planning moves along pretty quickly, but whatever. I'm happy to do whatever. Councilman Withers, your thing has been on this whole time. I'm so glad you have been quiet.
Well, thank you. Hot mic. I appreciate the discussion from Councilmember Sepulveda about this, as not speaking for the committee, but Councilmember Murphy has done a great job of making the Planning, Zoning, and Historical Committee run more efficiently, working with consent agendas for a lot of things. I think we've done a great job with that. I think one of the things that perhaps Councilmember Sepulveda is getting at is that while there is a planning or zoning piece to affordable housing, that it also really encompasses some other factors such as finance, such as some of the social aspects as well, and provision of services, support services for affordable housing. And so it is a little bit more specialized than just the zoning piece. And perhaps that's a good reason, even though some of those facets would also overlap with other committees, that given that it is, I think most people would identify it as a #1 crisis in our city, that maybe it does make sense to keep that as its own thing because of some of the specialization.
Works for me. I've pulled it out. Council Lady Hauser.
I just wanted to chime in and agree that affordable housing does need to stand on its own because that is becoming such a big issue and will continue to be. And it's more than planning. It has to do with budgeting. It has to do with homelessness. It's huge, and it doesn't need to be in with planning.
Got it. All right. Thank you so much. Okay, so do we want to go over this one more time with these changes? So I'm sorry. I'm glad you yelled out because I did not see you over there. Councilman Nash.
Thank you, Chair. Just going back to the public facilities and arts, I wonder if public venues might be a better name for it, since it's in the arts and the tourism, as opposed to public facilities. I always think of restrooms when I think of public facilities. Just saying, just a thought. And then, I apologize, a little late to the game. in that, and I guess I'm a bit of a victim of my raising, as having been on the Public Works Committee since I've been here, where stormwater and a lot of the traffic things were together because of the right-of-way issues. Kind of overlap an awful lot between those two. Wondered if our water shouldn't be back somewhere closer to transportation.
Do we see a lot of legislation for water?
Yes, lots. Every time all those sewer lines that get
Oh, abandoning this, that, and
abandoned
the
and
other.
taken
Oh, yeah.
up, and then every time they have to open up a new lane somewhere. Just a thought.
Yeah. So how is NDOT, does anybody have any thought process on, or know how NDOT is handling water? And he's gone. He was here, and now that we need him, he's gone. Can anybody text him and see if he's maybe, has Elvis left the building? Council Lady Henderson?
Thank you. So stormwater used to be at Public Works because it was within the public right-of-way. And then it went over to the water department. I used to know the year, but maybe a decade or more ago. So to Chair Nash's point, in Public Works Committee, whether through policy or oversight or just, your basic kind of abandonments and this and that, it is a lot of stuff that's happening within the public right-of-way. So there is kind of a synergy or an overlap there. So
Gotcha. So does anybody have any, because I guess there's water and then there's stormwater. So, because they're different.
No, they're all within the same department. There's the stormwater division of Metro Water.
Right.
Just now, like there is the division for, solid waste and
Right.
recycling and so
But
forth.
my thought, so like water deals with abandoning of, right, all that stuff but stormwater, maybe not so much, maybe it does, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out where we put it. If we're gonna put it into transportation, do you, Hannah, do you have any suggestions on if we were to move water and stormwater, because that legislation is right-of-way related 100%, how do we name that particular committee to reflect that? Just because transportation is right-of-way.
Transportation and public rights.
Did y'all hear that? She didn't even have her thing on. I'm sorry. She said transportation and public rights of way.
Okay,
Or
I can, I'll think on that.
or do we leave transportation to transportation and put in government operations, regulations, and utilities right of way stuff? I don't know.
Yeah, I think I apologize.
No, you're good.
I think, I think what I keep coming back to is some concern, and it's kind of spoken to by, moving public safety out, that just that GovOps regulations and utilities, there's just too much under that umbrella.
Not anymore, though.
So, because public safety's out, public elections have gone back to rules of confirmation.
Rules is out.
correct?
And environment is out, too, because we pulled that down to health and human services. So it's really just left with regulated beverages, codes, water, stormwater, solid waste, personnel, public information, and ITS, and sustainability.
Yeah,
There's not, regulated beverages, that stuff is sort of rubber stamped, not always, but usually. Codes, okay. Water and stormwater, but the rest of the stuff we rarely see. Legislation, it's very few pieces of legislation for personnel, public information, ITS. I'm hoping more for sustainability, but right now.
Yeah, I can almost see sort of like utilities and sustainability or something like that.
Well, I put sustainability into the description of government operations, regulations, and utilities.
But I could see, I think I see the point for kind of the catch-all around public information, ITS personnel, codes, regulated beverages, some of those but I just, water, stormwater, trash, like there's a lot, both operationally and legislatively, that happens in that space. And I think kind of the tension that and I don't mean a negative tension, but what we're kind of thinking about here is, are these committees kind of policy goal based, right? So we're talking about like sustainability and affordable housing and some of those policy goals, or are these department based committees? And historically, they have been the latter, but what I worry about a little bit is that we have historically not done this aspect of our work particularly well, but the legislative oversight piece, right, particular to departments. So how do departments implement the legislation and the policy that we pass? That's important work. And so when we kind of lose the departmental kind of definitions of how we define things, that ability to have that oversight and do that work, I feel like that we lose some authority as a body when we just dump everything into and I don't mean that in a negative way, but when we put a lot of things into that bigger GovOps, regulations, utilities, like we're losing some of our kind of oversight authority as a body in so doing that.
I don't know who had their hand up first between the two. She's deferring to you, Councilman Nash.
You? Thank you, Mr. I was wondering if transportation and right-of-way utilities might work. Occasionally, we get something from the electric company who...
right, or cable, or gas, or... So, transportation and right-of-way. I mean, that's good, yeah. So Council Lady Hancock just said, do we put it in the title, or do we just have an understanding that in transportation that has anything to do with right-of-way would go to the Transportation Committee? I don't honestly have any druthers either way. You think, wait, can't hear you, sorry.
Yes, I think having right-of-way in the title helps clarify a lot of...
Yeah.
Makes it much more apparent what else is involved.
Okay. Council Lady Stiles.
Thank you, Chair. In listening and looking at this, I do think that water should be its own committee. And if that's a part of including environment, then we do that. But there's so much legislation that involves water every single year. It seems strange that we wouldn't just have it as its own committee.
So at that point, we're creating more committees and we're sort of defeating the purpose. But a lot of that water legislation is sort of rubber stamp type stuff when you're talking about abandoning a right-of-way, sewer, this, that, and the other.
Well, I'm sorry, but what happens when if we start trying to merge this in being efficient, if we start running over and we run into the similar problems that we have now, where certain committees that we didn't think were going to take a long time start taking longer and we're losing people. I think the goal, if we're switching this, is to be effective and efficient. And I think if we're going to do that, if we know what takes a lot of time, I think we should give it the proper attention that it needs. I may be alone in that, but I do think that's important.
Council Lady Porterfield, she has Elvis on the line.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would it be okay if I put Mr. Honeysucker on speaker to answer the question that you had, because it was way too long for me to try to transcribe and to share with y'all?
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Honeysucker, you are on the mic.
Okay, I think, I'm sorry, my apologies, stepping out. I think one of the questions was about right-of-way. One thing about right-of-way, you got easements and abandonments of easements. When it comes to public utilities, those really sometimes work hand in hand. Sometimes they don't, but the majority of the time, those are something that go together with the department, because they're sometimes utilized as a project that's affecting NDOT or Metro Water, those projects work together sometimes simultaneously. So if it was, the question was with how do they benefit working together or being together, they really work together hand in hand a lot of times.
Okay, can he hear me?
Can you hear?
I can't.
So if we were to say transportation and right-of-way, would that make sense to have transportation, NDOT, and then water and really stormwater, anything related to that sort of be in the same committee? Would that make sense?
That would go together well.
Okay.
That would go together because that's covering the whole gambit right there.
Okay.
That does work together, yes.
Perfect.
Clarifying question, Madam
Yeah.
Chair. Are you saying one committee with all four of those, or were you saying two separate committees?
No, I was saying, so move water and stormwater out of government ops, regulations, and utilities, move that down basically to transportation and say transportation and right-of-way, because the vast majority of that legislation having to do with water and stormwater is easement or whatever abandonment, right?
Okay, thank
So
you. I just wanted to clarify.
In the right-of-way, yeah, for sure. Councilman, Nash?
Thank you. I won't take long. At our recent meeting of the Public Works Committee, where NDOT came before us to discuss right-of-way issues, they're meeting regularly with all of the utilities to try and organize, if they're going to repave a road, they want, per one of your discussions, we don't come back 2 weeks later and dig it up for a sewer line or some other utility. So they are working together very closely with all of those utilities.
Perfect. Okay. Oh, sorry. There's hands up all over the place. Councilman Bradford.
Thank you, Chair. This is probably just getting into the wordsmithing and the semantics, but, again, going back to Public Works, sometimes we occasionally have other utility providers, whether it's NES or Comcast, AT&T, come through with easements and right-of-ways. So if we're going to be putting anything that would typically go hand in hand with a transit plan or transit legislation, then instead of it being transportation and right-of-way, it seems like it'd be more encompassing if it was transportation and public utilities or transportation and utilities, or just go and combine and it'd be transportation and public works.
Any thoughts on, instead of transportation and right-of-way, transportation and, what'd you say, public utilities?
Either transportation and utilities or public utilities.
Any thoughts on that? Council ladies, Porterfield, I'm sorry. I want to call you Sepulveda
again.
Sorry.
That's my twin. I think, and I think this was mentioned earlier, I think that could then go back to transportation and infrastructure, because that all sounds like various forms of public infrastructure. So I think that's a good idea, and I think that would be a good title for it. And then I had a separate question with regards to Mr. Honeysucker, whenever you're ready for that.
We'll go ahead since he's on the line.
Okay, the question was, would waste services fall under that as well, since waste services are with water, or would waste services stay under that sustainability umbrella that was being discussed earlier?
Right now, I would keep that under government operations and regulations. So it would be, solid waste would be a part of the description of that committee, but water, stormwater would move down to transportation and whatever we name it.
Okay, thank you.
Does that, okay, yeah. Council Lady Stiles.
So if we're going to have water and stormwater coming down to transportation, I think because solid waste has moved over to water, that should also come down. It shouldn't be left up within government operations. They all need to be together. Water, stormwater, solid waste, because that's all under the same department. That could lead to more confusion. And I think that the name of the committee being transportation and public utilities, I think that's what Council Member Porterfield said. I think that's all encompassing enough.
even though solid waste is not really a utility.
It's not, but it is a part of water, and we are bringing, if we're going to.
I understand that. Just trying to think the best way to. So right of way, public utilities, infrastructure. If we said transportation and infrastructure, does that sort of encompass all of that? I'm seeing heads nodding, and then I'm seeing blank stares. Because what I'm trying to get away from is these long committee names where it's like, why even have a description of it? It's like it's all, it's just silly. But I think maybe infrastructure is the best way to describe that. Maybe, Councilman Rutherford?
Thank you, Chair. I recall from our last meeting, our last special meeting, I should say, when we met here in the chamber before as a committee, that we had a pretty lengthy discussion about using subtitles for committees to cover. The subtitles would cover what the committee encompasses, and so I would just want to sort of look back to that conversation and maybe not give a name to a committee that's too long.
Right.
It's one thing if it's a couple of words,
sure,
or 2 or 3 words, but not too long. And then I also wanted to make another point about grouping like topics together, because if we have similar topics that are spread out in multiple committees, I think then the council staff gets in a situation where they'll want to assign legislation to multiple committees, where if the topic was together, that it would be more likely to just go to one committee as opposed to multiple committees. Because if we have too many pieces of legislation that's assigned to multiple committees, we're not really solving our overall problem with the committee structure.
So, yes, I agree with you 100%. Sorry. Council Lady Henderson?
Thank you. I think one of the efficiencies that's gained with kind of NDOT and relooking at this is not having the redundancy of the traffic and parking and transportation committee, which was often, anything that was in traffic and parking had already also been in public works. So you've already gained an efficiency there. And I guess what I would say, whether it's right-of-way or utilities infrastructure, I do concur with Councilor Stiles and others. Splitting up, if waste service is now under the water umbrella, then that needs to stay in one committee, because then you have, the legal department's representation. There's a whole lot of, often kind of complexity in stuff in the public right away and that kind of, so we are often conferring with legal. And so then if, they have to be over here for that issue, but then the attorney has to be over here.
Right.
I would really encourage us not to split up departments, and then not necessarily devil's advocate, but just sort of thinking about proposing another way to think about it was something that kind of Chair Nash had elevated when we all had to, for that first time, do the state mandated kind of water board thing where we went all the way through that. And I was like, oh my goodness, many cities of our size or other, would have a separate water board. And I think we saw, with the complexity around the rate change and how that was communicated to the council or not, and to the administration. And, that is a big piece of kind of what this city does as far as kind of fundamentally water delivery. Water is essential to life. It's in all our streets. And so, it really is something that, so I could see potentially water, stormwater, waste services, environment, sustainability, that, not to create another, but that almost being its own. And then in that way, there would be a level of intention compatible with a water board, really knowing and understanding the water department, the rates. I think sometimes, because it's all under the public works umbrella, a lot of what we see on the water side is just sort of pro forma, abandonment, blah, blah, blah. A lot of what gets more discussion is the public works, what's happening in the right of way, these capital projects. And so I think sometimes water, while it has a volume, no pun intended, sort of gets short shrift from an oversight perspective by being under that umbrella. So I just kind of want to put that out for everybody's consideration.
Okay, so what if we have transportation on its own that would cover traffic, parking, and transportation and transit type stuff. And then we have another committee that is public utilities and infrastructure that has water, stormwater, sustainability, solid waste, all that fun stuff. Would that sort of appease everyone? I know, I mean, I feel like I'm starting from scratch on that one, but I feel like, to your point, I mean, it's all six, it doesn't have the other. There's 500 ways to do this. But so what Councilman Bradford has, beautification, water, stormwater, recycling, solid waste, he calls it environment and sustainability. I do think public utilities, because we do have, NES will come sometimes, Piedmont Gas comes sometimes. There's stuff that would fall into that's not necessarily environment or sustainability, but those two things are important. So saying public utilities and infrastructure would encompass all of that, and then transportation is just NDOT. It's just our transit and intermodal, which is exactly what that is. Does anybody have a thought process on that? Councilman Nash, time out now. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. I thought 2 minutes ago we had all agreed to put the NDOT and water together, and now we're separating them again?
This is what I'm...
And I would suggest that we keep the waste, talked about keeping solid waste in with water. If you were here for the solid waste master plan, one of the initial steps of that plan is to create another enterprise. I don't know how long that's going to take, but eventually that will be an entity of its own, a little bit like Metro Water. And part of the reason that kind of putting it in Metro Water for the moment is that that's a government entity that has experience with the enterprise feature, way of doing business, so that gave it a good place to launch from, possibly.
Okay, so we want to keep transportation, NDOT stuff along with water and all that, so not separate that, so have a really big committee of basically public works again.
I believe they talk all the time.
I mean, that's what it is. We're not changing anything, we're just changing the name of public works, and public works handles everything. So what are we going to name it? I don't really care. I mean, because we're going around in circles, so we've got to go with something, but Council Lady Stiles.
I thought we had determined that the name of the committee would be Transportation and Public Utilities.
We did. And
I think we should just leave.
And now we're not.
Or Transportation and Infrastructure? Then so be it. Transportation and Infrastructure.
And it handles?
Water, the transportation, parking, all one kit and caboodle, but it's called Transportation and Infrastructure.
Okay. And sustainability, or does sustainability stay up in government ops and regulations?
I'm going to defer to Councilmember Bradford.
Councilman Bradford?
I would suggest moving sustainability with this. Basically, we're combining transportation, parking with public works to create one new committee. And to the point that has been made earlier, Metro Water handles a lot of our sustainability items now, whether it's brush pickup, solid waste, recycling. And if we are maintaining everything together for oversight, then basically everything that Metro Water currently is in charge of needs to be in the same committee.
Okay, so are you cool with transportation and infrastructure and having that all handle, so traffic, parking, all that, water, stormwater, solid waste, and sustainability? That's where we're at? Done? Moving on. Thank you. We're done. We're done with that. Where's the gavel? Bam. Okay. I see Council Lady Sepulveda. Please let it not be about that. Okay.
It's not.
I'm going to mute you if you say anything. I'm kidding.
It's
Go ahead.
not. Thank you, Chair. I'm just trying to figure out how to, get what y'all wanted accomplished and making less committees and Just going back to public safety, I was looking at how Councilmember Bradford had it with MMPD, the fire department, OEM, health, it being lumped in with health and hospitals. I think someone was saying before, that just makes more sense to me. I think if a couple of the committee members, if you all would just, I know that a lot is going on in public safety right now with LPRs, but usually on those other days, how much legislation is actually coming down the pipe, and would it make just more sense to put it in with health? Because that makes sense to me.
So this is just my opinion that counts for one vote and that's it. To me, public safety is more of a government operation than it is a health type thing. I mean, it's you know you can argue it both ways, but agreed. Yes, the LPR thing has made public safety obviously carry a lot more time consuming. But is that typical? Probably not. So I'm open to that too. Right now we have public safety on its own, and we have it named Health and Human Services, which is hospitals, social services, veterans, Metropolitan Commission, Human Relations and Environment. So that's all that. So do you add public safety to that? I mean, that's a question. Council Lady Stiles?
I think public safety needs to remain by itself. It has enough issues that get brought to the committee that can take up a lot of time. And Health and Human Services also has their own components. So there need to be two separate committees. Those two can't be joined together. Otherwise, I think that would end up being one of those committees where people say, I couldn't meet and make it to all the other ones.
I tend to agree. So, naming out the fire department, OEM, and all that, that's all public safety, and the sheriff's office and all that, that is all public safety. So that, to me, makes sense. So Council, where's hands? Do you want to speak to what, okay, hold on, 2 seconds, Council Lady Porterfield. Let me hear what Councilman Bradford has to say.
So just a brief explanation on why I lumped health and public safety together. I think we can all say that the last year and a half, the role in our city's safety that the health department has played with vaccination rollouts, the point made earlier about air quality. There's a lot that health does that could be consumed as in the interest of our safety and health preventions and whatnot. And so to me, it just felt like it was a natural fit for hospitals, health, and public safety to be lumped in together, because at the end of the day, a lot of the policies and a lot of the legislation is going to be dealing with the safety and well-being of our city. And that's kind of why I felt that was a natural fit.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I understand what you're saying. So the word safety, to me, when I think of public safety as a committee, I'm looking at law enforcement. That type of safety. Yes, we have health safety type stuff. This is a health safety type thing, but this has nothing to do with law enforcement unless we're going to be regulating it, which, that type of thing. So, I could argue both ways. I do feel decently strongly that public safety should be on its own. Especially because we've put some things in with Health and Human Services that really makes sense to me. So MAC and social services, the hospitals, human relations, all the environment, stuff like that. Councilman Cash.
I will just add that, over the last year or two, we have had some ideas of kind of reimagining public safety, and we have we're starting a pilot program where mental health professionals and police officers are teaming up to address public safety concerns. So I do see how health and public safety do fit together.
Let's just do a show of hands for public safety as a committee on its own. All in favor of public safety on its own? Okay. Public safety lumped in with health. Okay, so health, human services, and public safety? Public. Wait, hold on. Say that one more time.
So pulling health and hospitals from under that human services umbrella with MAC and all those other things, pulling health and hospitals out and adding it to public safety. And I think Councilmember Henderson had a great name for it. Was that public health and safety? Public health and safety.
Public health and safety?
Uh-huh.
And, okay, so what's in public health and safety? Hold on. Let me,
Everything that's on Bradford's sheet.
okay, so then where do social services, veterans, MAC, human relations and environment go?
Where they are currently, but just pull health and hospitals from up under that. Because as it was being discussed, I believe health and hospitals were with MAC and all those other places. If you pull health and hospitals out and partner with public safety, those other items can still stand together.
So,
But my question was about environment. What does environment cover, and does that need to go back with sustainability?
so environment, I think, is more like emissions, air quality, that type of stuff. It's not it's not sustainability. Sustainability is like, you know, green energy sources and this, that, and the other. So
I think those are, I would think that those are congruent. And that sounds like that would go with public
government
works and
operations and
transportation.
government operations and regulations, where
The
sustainability
infrastructure
is.
one.
Oh no, we pulled sustainability down to, so all of a sudden we've got a massive committee with transportation, water, stormwater, solid waste, environment, sustainability, and what else? I mean, it's, you know, it's just fine with me.
That sounds perfect.
That sounds great. Okay. Okay. I am so confused at this point. Public health and safety. So, which is what Councilman Bradford had. And then what are we calling what was left over from what we had called Health and Human Services? So that
Human
would be
services.
just human services. So human services would have social services, veterans, Metro Action Commission, human relations, correct? That's it. And then environment, sustainability, water, stormwater, solid waste, and traffic, parking, and transportation would be in transportation and infrastructure. This is everybody's nodding up and down. All right then. Let me write that down before my brain totally gets rid of that. Hold on. Environment. So we're going to say transportation and, okay, so sustainability goes away. So then we're going to have government okay. Okay. Let's go over this one last time. Please, Lord, nobody raise their hand. Okay. How's that for running a committee? Just everybody stop. Budget and finance covers budget, finance, economic development, and convention. Government operations, regulations. It's going to be regulated beverages, codes, personnel, public information, and ITS. Arts, entertainment, and public venues covers public entertainment. I did say venues instead of facilities because nobody's going to the bathroom. It covers public entertainment facilities, fair, farmers market, arts, beautification, libraries, parks, greenways, and open spaces. Human services covers social services, veterans, Metro Action Commission, human relations. Transportation and infrastructure covers traffic, parking, transportation, water, stormwater, solid waste, environment, and sustainability. Planning, zoning, and affordable housing. No, planning and zoning. Affordable housing is on its own. Rules, confirmations, and public elections is on its own. Education is on its own. Oh, Lord. Council Lady Stiles. I thought I made a rule. Hold on.
I think you left in 3 arts, entertainment, and public venues. I thought we had moved tourism into that.
Oh,
Am
yeah,
I crazy?
tourism. Yeah, I'm sorry. Tourism goes into arts. Yes, you're right. I have that arrow, but I failed to articulate that. You are
Thank you.
correct. Council Lady Porterfield, it better be like, this is perfect, I love you, Council Lady Johnston. Is that what you're going to say? Okay.
Quick question. I didn't hear charter. Was that?
Charter is all by itself.
Okay, charter is by itself.
Yeah.
And then the other question was rules, confirmation, and public elections. I may have missed a part of that conversation. Would that not fall better under the government operations and regulations? No?
Well,
Okay, sorry. I heard 5 no's. Okay.
You're going to get shot.
Sorry.
You're going to
thank
get
you.
shot. Okay. Yeah, we had that, and then we split it out, and then we had long discussions, and we're back to, it's going to go to rules, confirmations, and public elections. Is that your hand up, Councilman Withers?
I think I've heard from Councilmember Van Rees, or the Vice Mayor's heard, that she actually does favor using the word culture a little bit more broadly rather than art specifically, although you could certainly use both words. But I think the word culture is a broader umbrella than the word arts.
Okay, so culture,
At least it's a
entertainment,
title.
public venues, entertainment, and culture. We got some no's. Arts, entertainment, and public venues. That's what people are liking better. Councilman Rutherford, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. A simple question here. What's our total up to in terms of our total number of committees?
You're killing me. We're at 11, apparently. 14. Councilman Cash.
I'm not sure the word venues, I get that in the description where it says covers public entertainment venues, that works for me, but some of them are not venues. Arts shows, farmers market, libraries, parks, and I know we've moved some of this around, but I'm not sure that venue is I know I like the word better than the word facility, which is kind of clunky, but I'm not sure venue captures all the facilities that are being covered there.
Hold on. I'm looking up synonyms of both venues and facilities, because now we're getting into semantics. That's all right. Public spaces. Public, none of that makes sense. Yes.
What about just culture and entertainment? The venues would fall under that. There was a second.
Culture and entertainment. Culture, arts, and entertainment. Oh, no, wrong one. Council Lady Henderson. You're gonna have to use your. You're gonna have to use your mic. I can't hear anything you're saying.
Sorry. So I know we're trying to get away from the, everything is in the name of the committee. But that said, I also feel like, parks and libraries respectfully, those are just all over the city. They touch everybody. People, kind of just saying that parks and libraries are just one of many facilities. They are. So if you're going to do that, then, fair, farmers market, libraries, parks, those are facilities or venues. But I just, the point that you're giving a titular word to arts and culture and entertainment, but then you're not also mentioning your parks and libraries, it just seems a little odd to me, respectfully. It's parks, libraries, and arts now. So, can it be parks, libraries, and arts and public facility?
Yeah, but we've added in fair, farmers market, and all that, so it's not just, I don't want to say libraries and then not say farmers market, and then we've got a committee that's 15 things long.
Right, no, I agree. That's kind of you're either it's kind of, I just think we're, some were including a litany, and then some were not, and then,
Yep, I get it. So,
I'm happy to drop my objection to the word venue.
but the damage is done. So, okay. So, culture. I'm sorry. Yes, Council Lady Stiles.
And so, as before, when we're talking about this now, all of this is going to come back to rules for more discussion. There'll be an email too in advance, so people.
Yes, what I just articulated, I guess we're back on arts, entertainment, and public venues, and we're gonna beat that one out. So I'll send an email to everybody, to the whole council. I don't think in rules we're going to actually make any changes. I think it's just going to be, I mean, this is what this is for. In my mind, because we can continue and continue and continue. So it's like what comes out of this meeting is going to be what we're going to vote on, and that's just what it is.
So my question is that email that you're sending out to the entire council, so
Yeah.
people will have an opportunity to look this over, and in case those that are not here had some feedback, will you take that, I guess, and before it comes to
Honestly,
rules?
no. This is our
Okay.
third special meeting. They've had ample opportunity to email their thoughts and feedback to Hannah. I mean, I've got to cut it off at some point because somebody's always going to have an opinion. And it just, you know, we're not going to make everybody happy with this, but we're going to have to at some point pull the trigger and go with it. So that's what this meeting is. We got to move on. It's either going to pass or it's not, whatever. Councilman Withers?
Thank you for that, and I appreciate this. What I would offer to the body is that the word facilities is more inclusive. A parks facility is a facility. A library is a facility. I think that the entertainment venue really only applies to entertainment venues, but the facilities piece, the facilities word or term does work well for a parks facility, for a libraries facility, for Nissan Stadium as a facility, for the farmers market as a facility. We really are talking about a building or a place or a piece of infrastructure that needs to be maintained in different formats. Hopefully all of the above do include restrooms. But but I think that the word facilities is a broader umbrella term that is more appropriate than venue specifically.
I tend to agree. A library is not a venue. It is a public facility. But yes. So would Council Lady Van Rees, I think more people are leaning towards arts, entertainment, and public facilities as a name. Is that going, I'm just going to go with it. Arts, entertainment, and public facilities. Somebody wanted entertainment. Say that. I can't hear you. Now you've got your mic on.
Right. Public facilities, arts and culture, or public facilities where? I think public facilities has to come first, respectfully, because it's libraries, parks, farmers market, fairgrounds. We can't have arts be the first name of a
So
committee
what I
that
had in
includes
there
all this
originally,
public
right.
facilities.
So what I had in there originally was public facilities and culture.
So public facilities, arts and culture? Where's that?
Arts being first is important. People always like to cast arts to the side.
I appreciate that, but it didn't
I
used to have-
understand that there are public facilities involved, but it's okay if we put it third and it'll still be all encompassing. So arts, culture, public facilities, that covers Councilmembers Van Rees's statement about culture. Yes, and arts, and the facilities are covered.
Okay, so hands raised, arts, culture, and public facilities versus public facilities and culture. So what, I know, right? Sorry. Okay, so all in favor of arts, culture, and public facilities, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or public facilities and culture. Public facilities, arts, and culture. 2. Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, I just respectfully, I mean, you have the fairgrounds, you have the farmers market, you have the entire park system and libraries, and the first name of that committee cannot be arts, respectfully. That's just, I mean, I appreciate, I love the
There are more public
arts too,
facilities
but
reflected in this than there are arts and culture. That's a fact.
I mean,
You're still on.
Cool. Thank you, Chair. We just voted, right?
We did.
Okay. Is that the vote?
okay, but
I'm just
also
confused.
respectfully, are we a committee of the, I mean, how are we structuring this vote? Is this the rules committee on which I do not participate? Councilor Stiles is a member of that committee, so I respect that. But
Yeah,
like, are we
actually,
a committee of the whole? Is this going to executive committee? Like, we've been pretty informal in how we're approaching this.
This is true.
And so I want to kind of keep that spirit of things, but also from just a practical and community understanding.
Okay, so I'm going to have Hannah speak to votes. We don't have a quorum, number one, and also there's very few people that are on the Rules Committee that could be able to vote in this thing, so I'm going to let her explain it.
The votes are just gauging consensus of people who are here. It's not, they're not binding votes. They're not going into the record or anything. That's not what, this meeting is necessarily for.
Yeah. I'm going to think on this because I do agree that there are more public facilities that are handled in this. I mean, the fair, the farmer's market, the libraries, all that is a public facility. Arts and culture, to me, is a little bit redundant, but if everyone, whatever, that's fine. So let me just think on it, if everybody doesn't mind. Councilor Stiles, oh my gosh.
So that was my point about the email that's going to be going out with these names that we come up today, so that the members that aren't here have a chance to kind of look at them. And I understand your perspective that there have been meetings that have been scheduled, but I think it's difficult, clearly, for the majority of us to show up. And if we're going to vote right now and say, okay, we chose a name and now on one flip-flop, then in that case, are you going to send this out as an email and ask for people's feedback and modify it
for the 9th time that I've done it? Yeah, and nobody sent back any feedback, but yes, I will do that. And then I will compile all of that, and what comes up in the Rules Committee will be based off of the feedback that goes to Hannah and then comes to me. Yes, that's what I will do.
Make it easier.
And then, yes, and then it will become legislation. I'll have, Hannah already has legislation. We had that for us the last meeting. We just didn't look at it just because I knew we were not anywhere close. But at least it's a starting point for her to sort of plug in what she needs to plug in with all the legal stuff that has to happen.
And I will say it'll change a little bit already.
It's gonna, right. So, you want to go over it one more time? Or is everybody good? Everybody?
Well,
yes,
I
go.
think we should leave it since we just established that.
No, I'm just saying, just a consensus. I'm happy to articulate it one more time so that we're all on the same page. So, budget and finance covers budget, finance, economic development convention. Government operations and regulations covers regulated beverages, codes, personnel, public information, ITS. Number 3, whatever we're going to call it. I'm just, right now, what's typed out is public facilities and culture. I'll say public facilities, arts and culture, I'm going to see what everybody says about it.
Arts, entertainment, and public facilities, that's what we had.
What's that?
Arts, entertainment, and public facilities is what was there. And then the discussion is whether that makes sense or perhaps.
Okay, it's going to cover public entertainment facilities, fair, farmers market, arts, beautification, libraries, parks, greenways, and open spaces. Human services is social services, wait a minute. Yes. Social services, veterans, Metro Action Commission, human relations, and yes. Transportation and infrastructure is traffic, parking, transportation, water, stormwater, solid waste, environment, and sustainability. Where did tourism go? I think I forgot to put tourism in the number 3. I'm not even going to name it. Planning and zoning, and then affordable housing, health and public safety is going to cover health, hospitals, and public safety. Rules, confirmations, public elections, charter revision, and education. Is that? Go ahead.
I believe we had said that it was public health and safety. What's the name of that?
You're right, public health and safety. Yes, that was in my notes. I've got 3 different things I'm pulling from. Okay? All right, y'all will get this from me probably tomorrow, and we'll just see what everybody has to say. And I will specifically ask what people prefer on the public facilities, arts, culture, arts, entertainment, but whatever. I'll ask, yes. Okay. Thank y'all so much for coming out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We had 12 or 11, but thank y'all so much. I know it's a pain, plus it's raining.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.